Hi, I'm Avery Alexander, and today we're going to be discussing sexual harassment in the workplace and just kind of discussing what that looks like. And specifically, we're going to be talking about what sexual harassment actually is, what the definition looks like, and what are different practical ways that you can see it played out within the workplace. And then also how to combat the issue from being a part of the team, and also discuss what leaders can do to help resolve situations and make people that have been involved feel comfortable in their workplace once again. So, sexual harassment is a form of discrimination, actually, in which unwelcome sexual advances or requests of sexual favors or asking anything physical of another person, whether that be a coworker, a subordinate, or a superior, and just any physical contact of a sexual nature at all, when that occurs and another person is made uncomfortable. So, sexual harassment or assault can take lots of different forms, and really some of them aren't really things that you might think of as sexual harassment, but they are. There's really no set definition of what qualifies as sexual harassment or sexual assault, really, and like distinguishing what does and what doesn't. There's no like rule book to look at, but doing anything that makes another individual feel uncomfortable or like they're being pursued or flirted with or even just complimented in a context where that's not what they want can be defined and qualified as sexual harassment. And so I think really just raising awareness within the workplace can benefit the team as a whole. And especially in today's workplace, a lot of things that you wouldn't think of can be qualified. So there are multiple reasons that dealing with sexual harassment and talking about it in the workplace and kind of talking about how allegations would be handled and just how situations can arise and what to do about them should be discussed in the workplace. And for one, there are several possibilities for legal action to be taken, and that's not just against the individual that's been involved, but also can be against the company as a whole. And so it can be pursued as against the individual employee, but also, like I said, against the company, because they should have policies in place to help prevent this. And so obviously, if that can be avoided for the individual and for the company, that is ideal. And to prevent, there's two different kinds, like quid pro quo harassment. Here's just kind of practical steps to be taken. So first of all, never ask or offer anything of like a flirtatious manner or a sexual kind of idea in order to kind of gain anything, whether you be offering it to a subordinate, to a coworker that's on the same level as you, or someone who's over you, inside or outside of work. And even events that transpire outside of the workplace can be taken and can be reported as sexual harassment. And so just being on guard and being aware of what you're saying and what you're doing at all times is really important, because things can be taken out of context and can be reported incorrectly. And also making sure that opportunities for new jobs or for promotions are handled within big groups and big settings, and trying to make sure that the qualifications for those and what's expected and what's needed is very clear. And in order to avoid a hostile work environment, staff should work hard to hold each other accountable and to make sure that the people that they work with aren't being harassed, but also aren't harassing others. And even if a situation does not directly involve you, or if you see something happening or you see something that might be, you're not sure, it's always best to go ahead and report it, because it is in the best interest of both of those people. Because more likely than not, one person didn't know, or they did know and they need to be held accountable and shouldn't be in the workplace anymore, and then the other person either doesn't recognize that it was harassment or doesn't have the courage to come forward. And it's really on the individuals that are in the workplace to prevent a hostile work environment, because it's not something that just one individual can do. It's something that the whole team needs to do as a unit. And that can look like an employee reporting another coworker. It can look like an employee reporting a subordinate. It can look like an employee reporting a superior. And there's not a way to just like decide which one is the only way that it can work, because it can go either way. And so another thing that's really important to help prevent sexual harassment is making sure that managers know what is going on and what they need to be doing, and kind of putting realistic steps out there of what they can do to make their workplace the best it can be, and to help A, avoid it happening in the first place, but B, also give them the right tools to know what to say and how to act and how to help when things do happen, because people are going to make mistakes, things are going to happen. And so it's just realistic to be it's necessary to be prepared for when those things do happen. And so the next question that's kind of being proposed is, okay, as a manager, this thing happens, it gets reported to me. What do I do? How do I help? First of all, it needs to be discussed between both parties. And if there's a third party that came and reported it, that person as well. And just make sure that the victim feels heard and feels comforted and like they know that it's not their fault, and just make sure that they're aware that you are on their side. However, it does need to be discussed with the person that the allegations are being made against primarily, because you need to make sure that things weren't taken out of context, but you also need to hear out the victim's side of the story and the witness's side of the story, and then be able to weigh, okay, what makes sense here, what actually sounds real, and what might sound to be a little bit sketchy, and just use your discernment, and if in doubt, bring more people into the situation to just make sure you're pursuing the right outcome, because it most likely will look like termination of a job for the individual who the allegations being made against. And it's also important to note that victims aren't always women. Victims aren't always of the opposite sex of the person who's harassed them. And especially in today's environment with the LGBTQ community on the rise, it's something that you definitely need to be aware of men making passes at men and women making passes at women, and also people being discriminated against because of their sexual orientation, and just making sure that you're aware of that and that you keep an eye out for it, and that your people who are on your team are keeping an eye out for it to help everyone feel like they're in a safe environment and are allowed to be who they are, and just be a person and do their work, and not feel like they have to be afraid of what people are going to say or how people are going to act around them. And also important to note that, like I said, victims aren't always women, and it's not always going to be something that has to happen between a subordinate and a worker, or it could be two people that are exactly on the same level. It's not got strict parameters on what the interaction can look like, and really anything can be harassment. And additionally, sexual harassment and assault can be something that kind of is touchy, because even with like the culture that we're living in, it's something that a lot of victims don't realize that it's harassment until later, or until someone points it out, hey, that wasn't right. And as a manager, you should be available to your staff, and you should be there for them to talk to about, hey, this happened and I didn't feel super comfortable about it, but I'm not really sure how to handle the situation, and be non-judgmental of the situation which the person may have been in, because realistically, if things happen outside of work, it might not be the best situation. And just be encouraging of open communication between yourself and your staff, and between the staff, and that's going to make it a lot more likely for these things to get brought up and be brought to your attention. And so a lot of the times, like I said, people who have been assaulted or have been harassed may not realize it, and so it's willing to listen to those witnesses and listen to those people that are third parties, and make sure that they know, okay, yes, thank you, like, we appreciate you for bringing this information to our attention. And just as a manager, encouraging that within your team, and making sure that people aren't afraid to be a whistleblower, and that they are aware that there aren't necessarily incentives, but it is an incentive for them to know that they're going to be bettering their workplace, and that they're the ones that are responsible for making sure these things aren't happening. Because yes, the manager can help, and there can be steps taken beforehand to try to make the work environment as comfortable as possible for everyone involved, but also people are going to do things. And so in summary, sexual harassment happens. Be prepared to handle it when it does. Be open, be encouraging, be willing to listen, and take all sides into account. But also, have that conversation with your staff beforehand. It's going to be uncomfortable, but it needs to happen. And make sure they know, hey, this is not okay. This is what our norms are in this office within this staff, and here's what's okay, here's what's not. If you think it's borderline, don't do it. And also just knowing what sexual harassment is, and being aware of the fact that it doesn't always look like what you would typically think of the girl going and the guy following her and things happening that she doesn't want. It can really look like all these different things. And so just being aware of that, and being willing to work with your staff and know what's going on, and being in tune with your staff to where they feel like they're able to come talk to you. And so those are just kind of some tools that you can take into the workplace and use them to strengthen your coworkers and strengthen your team, and just get the best outcome for everyone that's involved. Thanks so much.